Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is your host, Dr. FM, on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We are delighted that you have joined us today in another episode on Today's Africa, where we are going to be talking about the value of African children. We go live every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go live on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram, as well as StreamYard. StreamYard is indeed one of the most safest platforms for these sorts of things that we do. And we are grateful that Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, the number one African Caribbean music and talk radio, gives us the opportunity to have these important conversations on matters pertaining to Africa. And we are always delighted that God gives us an opportunity each day to make a difference in the world. And today is a very, very special day. I love this topic. And I'm hoping that those of you who are joining us from our 100 plus different countries around the world will be able to join in and ask questions, send us your comments, and even send us a greeting so that we know where you are viewing and listening to this episode from. Again, this is your host, Dr. FM, on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We are delighted that you have joined us in this special topic where we are talking about the value of children. So the question really is, do we value children in Africa? Do we value children in Africa? It's one thing to simply say yes, but it's another to be able to give evidence to that and actually say, yes, we do value children, and here is how we do it. So we're hoping that our guest will be able to join us momentarily and be able to provide a little more information that would guide our dialogue. And of course, we talk about the 3Ds. We dialogue to discover so that we decide on the next steps. So here we are. So it is said that the population of Africa, which is 1.5 billion, and that's a lot of bodies, my friends, my brothers and sisters, that's a lot of people. However, over 80%, some actually saying around 85% of the population of the 1.5 billion in Africa is actually below 30 years. And you can imagine what percentage would be below 15. A lot. So this is a very, very special topic to us as Africans and as fellow Africans. And we hope that you will be able to chime in and share your perspectives, your thoughts, your convictions, because we want to hear from you. And we really mean that. We want to be able to hear from you so that we can dialogue together. So 85% of the population is below 30. That is remarkable. Now, growing up in Africa myself, and by the way, I'm African not because I was born in Africa. I like to believe in the words of Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah, who said, I'm not African because I was born in Africa. I'm African because Africa was born in me. I think that's profound, and we all know that. As an African myself, I grew up, of course, as a little boy, and I have seen and we see how children sometimes are treated. And so this is going to be quite a dialogue, because we are just not going to gloss over this topic and say all the nice things about this topic, but we are also going to delve into some of the issues, some of the things that we have seen, how children are treated, how children are valued or not valued. And so I'm really, really excited. Now, for those in the diaspora, you know that most of the Western society has a commitment to children, and children are protected. We might say that. And of course, I say this with quotes. Children are protected. But we also know that sometimes it's the very same system that does not protect the children. I'm saying this because, well, today I brought one of my favorite T-shirts here, which I was wearing. I was wearing this the other day. It says, "Every child matters." Now, this T-shirt here is a very special T-shirt. I got this from Moose Cree First Nation up in Northern Ontario in Canada. And we know what has happened as far as Indigenous children are concerned, how they have been treated or mistreated, how unmarked shallow graves were found in some of the residential school grounds, which really sparked quite a response around the world. And people just saying, what is going on? Now, let me say this. Every nation has its own struggles. It has its own, I guess, opportunities and challenges. And Canada does, the US does, every country, Britain does, Ghana does, Kenya does, Lesotho does, Zimbabwe does, South Africa, Malawi, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Burkina Faso. We can go on and on and on and on. That is the truth. Each country has its own challenges and its own opportunities. And of course, we have to find ways to address these. But today we are asking the question, how are children valued in each of our nations? And right now we're focusing on what is happening in Africa or outside of Africa. African children, what is the value of the African child? So I just made reference to Every Child Matters. It's interesting how the First Nations, the Moose Cree First Nations, and all the other indigenous peoples in Canada, they did not say every native child matters. No, they said every child matters. And I was really fascinated and encouraged by such an inclusive approach to children. Just acknowledging the fact that every child matters. It doesn't matter where they're from. As long as it's a child, every child matters. And I think this is what we are talking about in this program today. So if you have just tuned in, if you have just joined us, please feel free to send in your comments, your questions, so that we can share these with other participants. I see that we have a comment here coming from Icon Like Man. It says, I wanted to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who took the time to wish me a happy birthday and sent prayers and showered me with gifts. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. He says, your kindness and generosity mean the world to me. I'm truly blessed to have an amazing group of people in my life. And to those who blessed me with cash and gifts and all that, he says, may God bless you. You are very welcome, Icon. And happy belated birthday. Again, we are saying that we are in this global village. I know in Africa we talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but we also understand that sometimes things happen to children that go unreported or unaccounted for simply because of the nature of people who could be carrying out whatever that is against children. And so we need to find ways to highlight what is happening with our children. So that's today's topic: the value of the African child, the value of African children. One of the saddest moments that I have experienced in social media was through the a photograph that was published, I believe, in March 1993. Well, the photo was actually taken in March 1993. This is a photo that was taken by Kevin Carter. Kevin Carter, a South African photojournalist, who took the photo of this little girl who had collapsed in an open field. It is believed that she was heading over to a UN mission where they were giving food to children. And this child is there in the open field with her face down. You can see her ribs, just bones. And there's a vulture just a few steps away from her. And Kevin, who took the photo, says that he took that photo while he was heading to the airport. So fast forward, later on, in the midst of all the accolades and appreciations that he received for taking such a powerful photograph and sharing that with the world, someone called in one of the television channels and said, do you remember how many vultures were there? And Kevin responded and said, I think there was one. To which the caller on the other side said, I believe there were two. One of them had a camera. What a statement. The caller said one of the vultures had a camera. Because people were asking, you took that camera, you took that photograph. What happened to that child? To which Kevin responded, I don't know. I don't know what happened. But later on, Kevin, I guess from the interactions with other people in social media, we could say he finally came to his senses. And he said that I could have stopped and done something about this child. We know that in the media, they had actually said to the photojournalists and everybody else who was working in those areas, do not touch those children in case you would contract a disease. So you can imagine, with that information behind you or within you, but that is a human being. And so the question remains, the value of the African child. I was thinking about that, and I don't mean to play the race card here, but I said to myself, if Kevin was taking that photograph, and that was a white child, would he have responded the same way? Just a question, an honest question. Well, I must hasten to mention that it pains my heart to actually believe this, that we still have vultures today who are preying on the African children. People who are making money through different kinds of fishy approaches with regards to the African child. I agree with Icon, who says, yes, African children are the future leaders, innovators, and change makers of tomorrow. But let's not be too forward-looking. We forget about the now. They can only be the future leaders, innovators, and change makers of tomorrow if we intentionally invest in them today. And so we need to do something. We need to change the way we invest in our children, the way we value our children. Icon goes further and he says they bring hope, energy, and creativity to their communities. That's true. Let's invest in their education, excellent, in their health, in their well-being, and provide them with opportunities to grow and thrive. By doing so, we will unlock the potential of the continent and shape a brighter future for generations to come. Very profound. Thank you, Icon, for mentioning that. Those are profound words. We must invest in them. It has to be intentional and not left to chance. So this is a very, very important topic, and the value of the African child, of the 1.5 billion population in Africa, 85% is below is below 30. And of course, we can only imagine how much of that would be below 15. And 15 are children. Now, I'm also speaking so passionately today because growing up as a child in Africa, my parents were not together. So I grew up with my uncles. And mom was working in the city. I was with I was with grandma for a few years while I did my elementary education, then moved into the city to be with mom along with my little brother. And I don't want to sound like everything was bad, but I experienced and witnessed things that were terrible as a little child. And I've also witnessed publicly children either being slapped. I'm not saying that children should not be disciplined. I'm all for discipline, because listen, if we don't discipline them, then someone is going to end up disciplining them. It could be the police, it could be, the prisons, it could be anything else. So we have to play our part as far as our responsibility to children is concerned. But there is a difference between discipline and punishment and abuse. It is the abuse and the unnecessary punishment that we are saying, instead of thinking that we are investing in our children by doing that to them, we could actually be throwing them under the bus. because many of them, they end up with emotional, mental, and behavioral issues that, as we know, these then spiral into other bigger issues later on. And so we have a very, very important responsibility. We do have a very, very important responsibility. But Icon Lightman, thank you for those powerful comments. Let's invest in their education, in their health, in their well-being, and provide them with opportunities to grow and to thrive. That does not happen by chance. This is your host on today's Africa, Dr. FM on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, and we are talking about the value of the African child. And we are hoping still that our special guest will be able to join us. And this is such a powerful topic that we need to talk about. Because if we don't value our children, we cannot expect somebody else to value them. We have to set the pace. We have to help other people to value our children, and they have to learn from us in terms of the value of our children. Because in some of our circles, children are there to be seen and not to be heard. And so oftentimes children grow up without saying much, and they glide or slide into adulthood, and without any skills to be able to contribute and be a responsible citizen. So this is a very, very important topic. And of course, we know that sometimes we have some of our brothers who end up with more than one wife, and they end up with lots of children. And of course, we need to understand that if that is a cultural direction that some people would like to take. By the way, I think if I was to suggest that to my significant other, I would not even suggest that, because I can't have more than one. It's impractical for me. And of course, we could talk from religious environments and contexts and all that. And of course, we know that we have a responsibility to make sure that if we have children, they should be taken care of. So I won't get into that. But I see that our guest has just showed up. And we are delighted that Pastor Doyin Owobamirin has joined us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good day. Thank you for joining us. We were not sure whether you were looking at Chicago time or whether you were looking at the Eastern Standard Time, because we were like, what happened to our guest? Anyway, listen, we are glad you're here.
Thank you.
Our brother is the president of the Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, the Chicagoland chapter, and is also the chair of the USA board of the Nigerians in Diaspora Organizations, as well as the president of Communities Connect Network. Now, we know that you are a man who is very, very busy, a man with multiple hats and multiple responsibilities. Listen, this topic about the value of African children, you and I talked briefly in terms of identifying a topic, and you're very, very passionate about this. Now, tell us, why is this topic this important to you?
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Mpindu. Number one, I think we've concentrated on too many areas of our national development in many countries in Africa, why we have not really taken the issue of our children, protection of children, rights of children very seriously. And that is one of the reasons why, when most of these our young people, uh, children, when they become young people, young adults, we already lost them. And then the very few who we have not lost, because the government is not, the country, the nations have not taken care of them the way we should. There is to a large extent a loss of a sense of patriotism. There is a lot of a loss of sense of service, because they just tell themselves, I've struggled through all this myself, and I am here right now, and suddenly the country wants to recognize me as their citizen. So we have a challenge of that all over Africa. And then you see, Africa has a very young population. And what are we doing about the children? Children are still being used as houseboys, housemaids. Are still being used as for slave work, child labor. All of those abuses are happening, and then many African nations are not taking this very serious. And so that's why I am very passionate about this. If we truly want to change our continent, which many intellectuals have agreed that the problem with Africa is not the problem of resources, is not even the problem of education, is a problem of a poverty of the mind. We are not poor by any sense, and the poverty of the mind does not start setting in when we're adults. The poverty of the mind starts setting in when we're supposed to, the time that children are supposed to be educated, the time that they're supposed to acquire values, the times that they're supposed, to understand who they are in terms of their both national and individual personal identity. We don't take care of all of that, and suddenly when they become teenagers, when they become young adults, then we then want to compel them, we want to force them to behave in certain ways that we have not brought them up to behave in. So this is why I'm very passionate, and I can see you, if you're very familiar with the story of Nigeria, for instance. We did not quickly arrest the problem of the Alumanjuris in the north, and these kids were abused and not properly taken care of, and now we see what is happening in the country. You have all kinds of things. You have the Boko Haram. You have the bandits. You have all sort of things going on because of these children that we've not really taken time to protect when they were kids. So they have no sense of commitment to the nation. They have no sense of commitment to anyone, because they have just been left to be on their own. And that cuts across many countries in Africa. What is the law? In many African countries, we have the laws. We just don't enforce those laws concerning our children.
Sir, you are just opening some cans of worms here, because the, the 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 things you're talking about, these are the kinds of things that make me mad in a good way. And thank you for making me. Thank you for contributing to my uneasiness and to my anger. And I'm choosing to be angry because I agree with you. Something has happened or has not happened earlier on, and then we try to address these issues later on. It's almost like we have lost the battle. It's too far. It has gone too far, and we should have addressed these earlier. Now, I know that you made reference to what is happening or what has happened in Nigeria with regards to the Boko Haram. You are saying that by the time they start doing this and having these beliefs that says that education, Western education, and all the other influences, they are sin, they are prohibited, they are not welcome. So you can imagine what kind of a society are we going to have if we have young people who, according to your statement here, and rightly so, the poverty of the mind. So because nobody invested in them, they embraced and processed the information from their own perspective without anybody putting in them.
Yeah. Let's look at it from also another dimension. I mean,
Yes.
even when you talk about African, the education of the African child, it is still in Africa that children sit on the floor in classes. It is still in Africa that buildings, schools are collapsing on top of children in primary schools. It is still in Africa that all of these things are happening, and I mean, we've all lived in any country that is called developed. You go into a class where children are, there are certain standards that you cannot but meet before you can operate. But in Africa, many parts of Africa, there are certain countries in Africa that at least are doing well. But in majority of the countries in Africa, this is still the case. Children go to school unprotected. Children, sit on the floor to have lectures. Most schools do not have electricity or power or anything. So when we look at this, and these children begin to grow up in this kind of atmosphere, I
Mm.
wonder what kind of citizens do we intend to produce. And for those who study psychology, like I told you in our earlier conversation, the mind of a child, they said at birth, is like a tabula rasa, like an empty slate. Between the ages of between the ages of 1 and 6, the mind of the child is formed. By the time any child is 16 years, their character, their personality is already formed. And then suddenly, in many African countries, we suddenly remember that they are our citizens, and then we want them to queue and to do the right thing, to follow the right law. These are the things that they did not grow up, learning and understanding. So these are the things that I am passionate, I'm concerned about. Even the health care for children in Africa. How do we take it? In any Western country, in any developed country, a child goes to the hospital, they are treated immediately. They are taken. In fact, it is a crime for a child to be brought to a clinic and then the doctor gives a reason why they're not. But in Africa, in many parts of Africa, and I'm saying many parts because there are places that are actually doing well. In many parts of Africa, children are taken to clinics, then they are telling their parents to go and look for money before they can even touch them. So all of these things are unless we begin to address the root cause of the poverty of mind, the
Mm.
poverty of our thoughts that we have. We cannot address. Somebody cannot change my thoughts the way I am at this my age. My minds are already formed. My character is already formed in many ways. I may try, but for you to begin to change perspective, to begin to change orientation, to begin to change attitudes, you must begin to look at those children at the ages when their minds are being formed.
Yeah. You are absolutely right, Pastor Doyin. You are touching on live wire here. This dialogue that we are having today is something I believe that our governments need to hear the perspectives that you're sharing, sir. Our children's services, our non-governmental organizations who are working with our children in Africa need to hear this. Our churches need to hear this. Our politicians need to hear this. Because, I mean, you were saying, listen, we have children who are sitting on the floor in our education facilities, in our schools. What do we expect from them? What are we communicating to our children when they start like that? You know, and
Yeah.
and, and then you're saying by age 6, the mind is formed, the character is formed, attitudes are formed, perspectives are formed. So what are we doing? So what then do we do with this understanding, Pastor Doyin, that it takes a village to raise a child? What's happening in the village? Are we really raising children in these villages, or it's just a statement that we throw around?
Well, for those who are familiar with the history, in traditional ancient Africa, like you said, the community raises children. The child is not just the responsibility of the parents. The entire community join hands, because the when that child becomes whatever it becomes, he's going to be either the pride or the shame of the community. So that is why that happens. But we have lost every sense of those values now. We have lost the sense of community that used to be the hallmark of our identity, of our nature as Africans. So now we leave our children. We just don't take care of the children the way we ought to. So what we can, in my opinion, like I said, first there has to be laws, there has to be enforcement of those laws, and there has to be a lot more advocacy for the protection of the rights of the African child. There was a time when this was center and focus to many discussions, but I think at some point in time we just kept quiet about it, because we see that there is a plethora of other problems that we need to address, and the children are not really the most important in that equation. But in my opinion, it is every African leader, every African government should make conscious. This is not just something that happens by accident. Conscious in planning to ensure that children are protected, that environments and spaces where children operate, where they learn, are make sure that they are provided with all the resources that they need. The resources that to single African politicians steal is enough to take care of all the children in his local community, if he is willing to do it. All the resources that we allow other people to come and take away, if we would just deploy these things and say there has to be a minimum standard. There has to be a minimum standard for every child across Africa in terms of how do you raise them, how do you protect them. There has to be people brought to justice when they are abused, when they are assaulted, when they are harassed. Even parents should be held accountable when you send your own children to go and become housemates. Children, 3 years children, 4-year-old children are sent to be housemates, assaulted, harassed, and the parents are collecting wages, are collecting salaries, payments over these children. This is still happening in many African communities. And I think it's something that, on a continental basis, we should all come together and discuss. We should increase our advocacy for this, so that by the time these kids are, by the time they are 16 and 15 and thereabout, their minds are already in a place where they are not supposed to be. And then we want to force them to be citizens. We want to force them to be what we have not brought them up to be. It's a serious thing that we need to begin to address. Thank you.
I hear you, sir. For those of you who just joined us, this is Today's Africa on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio with your host, Dr. Ephraim here. And we are delighted to have Pastor Doyin Owobamirin, who is passionate about children. This is an African brother who has been in the diaspora for several years, and he is aware of how children are treated in other parts of the world compared to how children are treated in Africa. And of course, some of the information you're sharing, sir, we can tell that you're not just, this is not textbook information. You're talking from experiential knowledge here, and you're simply saying that, I think for a start, if we had laws that will be enforced, laws that highlight the rights of the African child, and within that, to actually have like minimum standards, what is it that we can say, no, it has to be from here moving forward. You cannot do this. Like earlier on, before you came into the studio, I was saying that I've watched children being, abused and really disciplined. We might say disciplined in ways that just make you wonder what is going on and what happens if a child can be treated like this in public. What happens when they get home where there's nobody? Now, I'm not saying that all that is bad. There are times when children definitely need to learn that, I should not be doing this. But I think we are saying there is abuse elements that must stop. And there are some things that you cannot do to your child, be it in public, because there are laws that are enforced and there are rights of children that has to be adhered to. And I'm listening to you and I'm saying this is great information and we really need to do something about it. But where do we start, my brother? How do we take this to the next level so that we can actually say, let's move this up a notch?
Well, in my opinion, I think, like I said, we need to start with advocacy. We need to start possibly shaming nations and politicians who these things are happening in their enclave, then they're not doing anything about it. We need to harass them in every gathering where they attend international events to come and talk about whatever is happening when they are not doing anything about children in their countries. So this is where I think we need to start, and then we need to begin to. I am thinking that we could set up a group that.
Looks like we just lost you
trying
there.
to address.
We just lost you for a little bit. Can you repeat that? We need to start a group like what?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I said we need to start an advocacy group.
Yes.
That can go across nations and address our different parliaments, that can talk to our different policymakers concerning the subject of the rights of the African child. There has to be a framework, and then I am trying to bring together a number of people who share the same sentiment. Let us come together. Let us provide a framework that we can present to different parliaments, different governments, and say, for anybody to run a school, for any community to run a school, this has to be some minimum standards. For any parents who who will abuse their children, this has to be the standards. For instance, I mean, there is nothing wrong with discipline. I'm not against disciplined children. That's not even my concern. You can discipline children, but however, how is it right for a parent to send a 4, 5, 6-year-old child to be housemaid in another person's house and be collecting payment on them? That is slavery. That is forced labor. That is child abuse, and it's still happening. So at least let us start from those little things that we can influence. That at the level of government policies, it should be a crime in any African nation for a mother or a father or a parent to send their child to go and be housemaid or houseboy or housegirl. I mean, many people who come from West Africa understand what I'm talking about when you mention houseboy, housegirl. That's like sending your child on a slave assignment. Yeah. And whatever happens to them there, they are abused, they are harassed, they are tortured. Yeah. Because you are getting payment, and the children come back and complain. The parents say, "Well, you got to go there, and that's the life that you've got to learn." And by the time the child grows up, you can imagine a child growing up with that kind of mentality. They are already mentally assaulted. They are already psychologically abused. They grow up with some form of hatred and bitterness in their mind, and they are saying, "When I ever get to the government, I will do everything in my power to ensure that I never go back, in that my children never go back." And then again, of course, this is how we begin to build the character of stealing, the character of selfishness. Because any child that grows up in that kind of environment, what do you expect them to think of the nation that they claim to be theirs?
That is a very good point, because it's almost like I've been neglected. Nobody was looking after me, and now you're expecting me to be a responsible citizen. How does that happen? And so children then, revolt. They work against that, and I think the same thing happens even in our own families. I agree with you that discipline is important. Telling children what to do and what not to do when they're young is very, very important, because we're laying a foundation for them in terms of how they turn out in future. And obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that every child who had a good beginning will always be whatever, but you are certainly helping to form the mindset of the child. So I'm very much in favor of an advocacy group to have people come together to address these issues. And I think contexts like the one you and I were a part of, where we have key people who are connected to governments, African countries, connected to the UN, as Icon says here, all this happens by good parenting, and good parents or good parenting skills actually help in terms of what is to happen. Because without good parenting skills, and if some of our parents have not received those kinds of skills, it becomes very difficult for them to pass on to their children anything, because you can only serve and you can only do from what you have. You can only share what you have. If you don't have it, you can't share that. So it is a very, very important part of this process. And I'm so glad you mentioned the need for advocacy and making sure that we are talking about these matters to parliamentarians and policymakers, creating a framework. And obviously, this to me means that beyond our conversation today, we need to do something about it. We can't just talk. In this podcast, we dialogue to discover so that we decide on the next steps. So I'm really hoping that you and I and others in our community will be able to say, let's take this to another level, because we can't just be talking only. The information you've shared about, just before you came on, I was talking about, we remember in 1993 when Kevin Carter, a South African photo journalist, produced that photograph of a little girl with her face down in the heat of day, just showing her ribs. She was starving, and it is believed that she was trying to get to that place to get food, right? And I was saying, if Kevin took that photograph, and if Kevin being a white South African, if it was a white child, would he have done differently? I like to believe he did. And I mean, I'm sorry that Kevin finally, in the midst of all the accolades and the prize that he won for taking that photo, sadly he ended up taking his own life, because someone said to him, "Listen, how many vouchers were there?" And he said there was one voucher. And the person on the other side of the phone said there were two vouchers. One had a camera. And I guess it just got to a point where he couldn't live with that. To me, I mean, it's sad that Kevin ended up taking his own life just from trying to cope with what had happened. But I'm wondering, how many of our vouchers have the conscience now, today, to be able to say, let's change the tide here. Let's do things differently. Let's make a difference for our children. Many of our countries, they have resources that if they were to invest, like you said, Pastor Doyin, if they invested in the education, say in the schools, and just say from grade 1 or grade 0, children are not going to sit on the floor. They are going to start on a good note, because we as a nation, as a country, we value education so much that we want to make sure that there is desk, there are benches or there are chairs, so that the children will start on this note and not be sitting on the floor as if, they are being punished for going to school.
Yeah,
I have
even
seen
when
that.
you look at
I have
when
seen
you
that. It's sad.
yeah, when you look at the statistics in itself, even UNICEF said 1 in 3 children in Africa live in severe childhood poverty. That is due to inequality, conflict, and climate crisis of all sorts. So, I mean, we just need to put, the African government needs to put more resources, more effort, more time, more planning into taking care of our children. Because if we don't do it, we're talking about we want to see changes in Africa. Africa is going to be the next world power. The fastest growing economies and all. That is not going to happen, because these children are the ones who is going to manage all of that. Children who are malnourished, children who are not taken care of, children who are abused. Now, let me use the instance of Nigeria, for instance. And I think that this is, any Nigerian will be familiar with the fact that, we have the private schools and we have the public schools. And because the rich people can afford to send their children to private schools, they don't care about what happens in the public schools. And then the public servants who are supposed to, be more concerned about public schools, they also want a better life for their children, so they send their children to private schools. So public schools are completely abandoned for poor people's children. Resources are not provided. No basic standard is required. And all the things that the children of the elites are able to enjoy, children from poor homes in rural communities cannot enjoy those. And these children are going to grow up into the same workforce. They're going to grow up to claim the same nationality that the other children are also claiming. So in my opinion, this is what I call, when these children continue to grow up from these two completely extreme different perspectives, they will grow up with what I call mutual hatred. There will be mutual hatred for each other. Look at this genius, because his mother does not have resources to take care of him. They send him to another person's house to go and take care of children that that are not even half as intelligent as he is. And then, because any of those child, thousands of destinies are attached to them. So if that child is destroyed, because of the policies of our government, because of our nonchalant attitude about how we take care of our children, thousands of destiny are also going to be destroyed in that process. So this is not something that we gloat over it. We just gloss over it. We just talk about it as if it doesn't matter. This is the foundation of development itself. This is the foundation of progress itself. A nation that cannot protect its children, that cannot provide for its children, that cannot defend its children, is a nation that is condemned to doom. It doesn't matter what other policies. You can build all the skyscrapers in this world. You can discuss all the economic parameters in this world. Who is going to run all of those things? And I say this even in my country, Nigeria. The most successful industries in Nigeria that the youths are very active in is entertainment and IT. And these are places where these young people don't even need to wait for the government. They just go and do it themselves. And then we complain. So this is the foundation of the problem that we have. And unless and until we are set to address it, well, we will just be going on in what I call a vicious circle. The Nigerian example is very disheartening when you see what is happening in the country, and that is where almost 60% of the population are youths, children who become adults without even understanding what childhood is all about. They cannot refer to this is what I enjoy as a child. They struggle through life as children, they struggle through life as adults, and then we say the continent is not moving.
That's right.
And these children, because we do not teach them the value of nationality, of nationalism, because we do not treat them the values of integrity and self-dignity where they're growing up. Of course, they are open to anybody who is bidding for their heart, for their souls. You know,
you are absolutely right, because I was just wondering, what can we expect from these children if we are not intentional in investing in them? I mean, we cannot expect the world out of them when we're not really advocating for them and investing in them. And so your point is valid. We need to do something. We need to
there has to be at least a 15-year national development, in fact, not national, continental development plan, or what I would call a 15-year intervention plan for the African child across nations. Because don't forget that any child that is just 10 years old, 5 years old this year, in 15 years they will be 20-year-old. They will not just, they will be family men, they will be fathers, they will be, they will be adults. So there has to be that, so that in the next 10, 15 years, we can then begin to say, oh, we have a new generation of Africans who think differently, who are passionate about the country, who knows who they are as Africans, as citizens of a country. These are things that are built into people. It is not something that we acquire. We don't acquire it. It is consciously built. Like, take America, for instance. The moment a child is born, you from primary, from elementary school to whatever, they keep saying, they make you know that as an American, you have a right, you have dignity, you have this, you have that. We go to many parts of Europe. They are all proud to say, I am a Swedish, I am a Finnish, I am all of this. And talk to my children in Africa, they're looking for how to escape.
Yeah.
It's really sad. And I honestly, every time I think about it, I meditate over it, it just breaks my heart.
I hear you, my brother, and I agree with you totally. And I am actually glad that we're having this conversation today here on today's Africa on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, the #1 African and Caribbean music online radio station. We're talking about the value of the African child, value of the African children. And you have given us a lot of food for thought. And I really like the focus on advocacy for the children and talking to people who make decisions. And I think from the potential access that you and many others have to influence others at the top, I see hope. Yes, you are right. It can be very, very discouraging, and I think it's so easy for us to even, make this sound like, here we are just being critical negatively. But no, we're not doing that. We are here to actually say it is possible for us to do things differently and invest in our children so that we can expect more from them. Listen, you and I are older, and we're not going to be here forever. We're not going to be here long. Yeah. Who is the one who is going to carry, this mission, this vision into the next phase or to the next generation. It's our children. And so you are actually right in saying that we need to have this intercontinental development plan. And I will be more than happy, and I'm sure, given your networks as well, these are things that we can stand up for. As we dialogue, I think we have to learn to dialogue, have meaningful dialogues that are purpose-driven, so that we can discover things that will help us to move into the next step.
How important this is. Even when you look at the statistics, even from UNICEF, from all that, shows that sub-Saharan Africa has the highest number of out of school children globally. The highest number of children out of school globally. How do we not even to talk about the gender disparity that is also a problem. So when there is conflict, when there is crisis, when there is the issue of climate change, the first people that are affected are the children, because these are people who cannot defend themselves, who cannot provide for themselves. They are the most vulnerable.
That's right.
So, and I don't even know how. So what the point I really want to emphasize is there need to be an increment, an increased investment in early childhood education in Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. There has to be improvement in teacher quality, and there has to be improvement in access to education for marginalized groups, for people in rural communities who do not have the access of what we call private education. So we can work together on this. It's a dire situation, but however, it is not a situation that cannot be addressed, that cannot be fixed. Where we have the will, where our leaders understand the danger of leaving this matter unaddressed, unattended. Thank you.
And I really believe that what you're sharing with us is very inspirational, because I think you are challenging us to not just sit and not do something about what we are hearing, because you and I, we have a role to play, and so does everyone in Africa. We have a role to play to make sure that we take things to the next level, where we can really work towards investing in our children so that they can learn,
And permit me to also add, African governments, particularly, and I'm focused about particularly sub-Saharan African leaders, should stop looking for aids to educate our children. We should stop begging for aid. We should stop being beggars to educate our children.
That's right.
We have the resources. We have the resources. Yes, we have the resources to take care of our children. We should stop looking for aids all over the place. There is this aid, this, aid that we want. We want other people. Who wants other people? You, my brother, Dr. Mpindu. Do you leave your children to be trained by other people?
No.
So this is the point. So we do not take care of our children. We're looking for USAID. We're looking for Alliance Francaise. We're looking for all those. We're looking for Goethe Institute to come and help us educate our children. We should be conscious. We should make conscious. Our governments, our leaders should make conscious effort to ensure that these children, there has to be a target. There should be a target to say in the next 5-6 years, this should be the level of enrollment of children in schools. This should be the standard. This is the number of schools. This is the quality of schools. And then we can begin, perhaps, to change the face and the look of Africa the way people see it. All you need to do is just Google the African child on the internet. And you will just look at the image that you see. If I am a president, or I am a government official in Africa, I would not be glad to see children from my country, from where I claim to be leader, to be shown in that regards. And it doesn't matter to African leaders. They don't even bother about it anymore. We don't even talk about it anymore. It's just, And then because the government has failed, individuals like me and other people who are doing similar jobs, we go looking, begging with caps in hand, begging for donations to save the African child, to help the African child. You know, it's even insulting to say Europeans are coming and saying they want to help us save the African child. The Asians are coming, they want us to help us save the African child. And we have leaders. How many times have you heard Europeans saying they want Asians to come and help them save European children? Or Asians saying they want, you know, Africans to come and help them save Asian children? Why? Why does it have to be Africa?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, man. That's painful to hear. But you're telling the truth, my brother. You are, like I said earlier, you're touching on some live wires here, because this is something that we know. We're not talking about, you know, textbook information here. We're talking about something we know from lived experiences, and it is possible. Like I was interjecting and saying, we have the resources. We are able to actually say, you know what, we're going to start and make sure that the children from the very beginning, as they as they prepare to go into schools, those who can afford to send their children to private schools, that's great. But what are we doing as governments, as nations, to make sure that those who cannot afford the private education are receiving equally important, so that, you know, the very thing that you mentioned about mutual hatred is not something that we perpetuate, but they actually realize that I could have come from underprivileged or difficult circumstance, but in terms of knowledge, in terms of information, we are equals. You know what I know. Yes, I may not have I may not be coming from a big house, but from my rural school, we are receiving the type of education that is being offered in the private schools. And that is something that we can do. It is doable.
Yeah.
It is doable. So I know you have mentioned quite a number of, you have given us a lot of nuggets here that we really need to take to the next level here. You talked about the ought to be conscious planning. You made reference to the Intercontinental Development Plan. And I really like that, because not only are you just talking theories here, but you're saying here is something we need. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying there has to be an intentional, functional infrastructure that will serve this type of a vision. Because if you don't have an infrastructure to make sure that things are done, everything just belongs to the good basket of good intentionality. It doesn't amount to anything, and we don't want that. And you were saying we need to have an infrastructure where there are laws and enforced laws. The rights of children, there ought to be minimum standards, which I'd like to believe that all our schools, even in the rural area especially, what are the minimum standards that they function on, that they can actually say to the government, no, we need this. But without being told that, listen, you can't have this because we don't have it. And yet we're driving all these big cars, cars, and
Let's even thanks, my brother. Let's even statistically I'm talking about sub-Saharan Africa now. Less than 2% of their education budget is allocated to early childhood development. Less than 2%. So you can imagine what kind of quality of education we have. Less than 2%. So we are abysmally behind any other country in the world, in other continents. even in other parts of Africa, considering how little we value not, and that because the conversation is what is the value of the African child.
Mm-hmm.
The value is less than one. The value is less than 1% of what is allocated to education. So which means we don't consider it an important factor, an important sector at all. So it's really appalling, and that's why I said this is not something that can happen overnight. There has to be a conscious, planned, deliberate effort to address this issue, and there has to be. We used to have. I just want to on a lighter side. We used to have before it used to be everything will change by 2020. New economic something by 2020. New something, skinning something by 2020, that one by 2020, and then we moved from 2020, then it became 2020 something, and then we moved from we keep shifting goalposts and not achieving any of the set goals.
Yeah,
it's and I keep saying, and I would not stop saying, early childhood investment in early childhood education should be a priority for every African nation, particularly emphatic and with emphasis now on the sub-Saharan African countries.
Oh, my brother, you are inspiring us, and I really appreciate the perspectives that you're bringing to those of you who joined us later. This is Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio with your host here, Dr. FM, and we're talking about the value of the African child, and we have Pastor Doyin Owobamirin with us, someone who is passionate about this very topic. And I'm just wondering, my brother here, as we have now hit the 1 hour mark, and we know that you came later, but I am just wondering, in terms of next steps, your thoughts. Let's think next steps with regards to parenting, the value of the African child, and then our education. Whether we're thinking politicians or whether we're thinking, the education sector. We could include health, we could include safety, and those are other areas as well. We could talk about another time, but for today, I'm just wondering, what are some of the things that you would like to live with us, so that this is not just one of those episodes we have a good discussion and then we plan the next thing, but what is it that you could say, moving forward, here are some of the things I would like to live with our listeners and our viewers on a day like today, as we think about the value of the African child?
Well, we all love our continent, and we bear burdens for that continent, and we want to see changes, and we want to see things move forward. We want to, see our children live a better life. We want to see our economies improved. We want to see all of that stuff. But we need to come together now and begin to impress it on our government, particularly those of us in the diaspora, and begin to impress it upon our government that we cannot truly develop if we do not invest in our children. We cannot truly move forward if we expect that the education of our children should be left in the hands of aid providers. And then we should also come together, for those who share like minds, which we will start, you and I will start that process, come together and begin to make a lot of noise about how, children are treated in Africa. And my focus is basically on sub-Saharan Africa, because countries like South Africa have actually made a lot of progress in terms of child education. Most countries in North Africa, because when we're talking about Africa, we're not talking about just a village or one country. We're talking about over 52 countries. So most countries in the north of Africa, they are doing really nice in the way they in the way they invest in early child education. South Africa has made a remarkable progress in funding for ECD programs. But however, in most part of the sub-Saharan Africa, you know, we still, particularly West Africa, if I will focus on that I'm very familiar with, we still completely behind every corner of the world in terms of how we take care of our children. So what is the value of our children? Our children we should not just, you know, be appendages, be things we will just talk and gloss over. There are things we should take pride in. We should go to our schools and take pride in what we see. We should look at the, you know, how they are protected, defended, provided for, and be proud of what we have been able to accomplish. And I ask anybody from Africa right now, and from West Africa in particular, can we really look back and say we are proud of how we have invested in our children, particularly those children of the most vulnerable ones, the indigent ones, from rural communities, from marginalized communities? Can we really say we're proud of what we have done with them? Because these children that we fail to invest in and take care of, they are the ones who will become problem in the future for the ones we spend all the money taking care of. So the Lord will help us. We will keep talking. We will keep advocating. We will keep coming together. We will keep rubbing minds, and you know, we will keep yelling at the top of our voices, and we'll keep putting plans together that will make our governments, our leaders, to listen.
You know, this is very, very important information you've just shared with us. Those of you who joined us later, we have been in conversation here with our brother, Pastor Owobamirin, who is passionate about children, the development of children in Africa. And he is not just a theorist, but he is a pragmatist, someone who is a practitioner in this, actively involved in his community and as well as in his country of origin, Nigeria. And you are saying that when all is said and done, there is no development, no lasting, meaningful development in Africa without investing in our children. We cannot continue to rely or to depend on aid providers to help us when it comes to the development of our children. And you're saying that early childhood education should be a priority for us, not appendages, not something that we should be ashamed of, but you're saying we ought to have pride in terms of how our children are being provided. And this is wonderful. Listen, you have to come back. You have to come back. There are some other areas that we did not even touch, and we would be honored to have you come back so that we
I'm looking forward to joining you again.
I am glad to hear that. And by the way, we will have you back. That's not a threat; it's a promise, because
Okay.
you are a great resource, my brother, and we are delighted to have someone like you. And I'm so glad that Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, Today's Africa, has had the opportunity to have this conversation with you. It is a conversation that will be archived for others to hear about. We'll pass it on to others, and we will also ensure that this information is spread to people who are policymakers, people who make things happen. We want to make sure that, I'd like what you said, we need to continue to be advocates. We need to continue to shout from the top of our voices. We want this to be heard. We need to continue to make noise enough to actually say enough is enough. And so, again, we're so delighted, my brother, for you joining us today. This is your host and has been your host here, Dr. FM on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, the host of Today's Africa, an opportunity for us to dialogue on matters pertaining to Africa. We go live every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we bring in a variety of guests. We go live in over 100 different countries. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, including StreamYard. And again, thank you for being with us. Let's keep up the good work. Let's be advocates, and let's make our children know that they value, and they don't start valuing when they are teenagers. We need to start early and investing in them. And our brother was very, very kind in helping us with this information. And so, again, by the way, I want to remind you that coming up on the hour, right on the dot, is the Caribbean Flavor with Mr. Marcus and Miss Jen to Blue. You don't want to miss that. And again, this is Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. Has been your host here, Dr. FM, signing off and saying, let's keep on keeping on doing the right things. It's always the right time to do the right things. So again, thank you for being with us. Let's make a difference, make a difference, make a difference, make a difference. Thank you for being with us.